barely a teenager the first time I decided to kill myself. If I knew then what I know now, well, it probably wouldn't have changed very much. And it probably wouldn't have changed very much because sometimes it doesn't matter what you know. What you feel just takes over. And there are so many ways like this that our perception becomes limited. In fact, our perception is its limits. Our world as we know it. Take, for instance, that time you got cut off in traffic. And let's face it, it was probably today. When it happened, maybe you felt your heart rate start to quicken, your face flushed, and you jammed on the brakes as you focused in on that one license plate as it sped by. Maybe the only thing going through your mind at the time was how creative you could be. With the words you were about to hurl out the window at that guy. Now, eventually, your perception would have returned to normal. You would have relaxed and went on with your day. You probably would have even forgotten about it. But imagine you didn't. Imagine you stayed there in that dark, narrow place. That's what it can be like to live with a mental illness. At least that's what it was like for me at the depths of my own mental illness as a teenager. So when I sat in my 8th grade guidance counselor's office, the same thoughts kept rolling through my head over and over again. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not enough. And it didn't matter if I was, because those were the constricted limits of my perception. So when I held that 8-inch knife and I felt the blood begin to trickle down my hand, the only thing going through my mind was, no one would even know that you're gone. Nearly everyone in this room is familiar with some example of the growing mental health crisis occurring in our world. But this crisis has recently reached a much more relevant point in the lives of everyone in this room, whether you came in here realizing it or not. On July 3rd, 2016, former PF debater and my friend, Josh Kubiak, killed himself. He competed on our school's speech and debate team for a year and was just days away from hosting his own high school graduation party at the time of his death. When I attended his wake, I was moved by the outpouring of support that came from our community to honor Josh's life. At the same time, however, I became more aware than ever before at how difficult it was to start real dialogue on topics such as suicide and depression. So this speech is dedicated to Josh and the approximately 42.5 million other Americans still fighting through their mental illnesses. Why We Choose Suicide by Mark Henick. Had the guidance counselor not reached for me across the room, tackled me to the floor, and wrestled that knife from my hands, maybe I wouldn't be here today. Now, not all days were that dramatic. In fact, I was so normal that most people would never have known that I needed help. Then again, if they did know, I would have been the last to find out about it, because that's just how these things go. People seem plenty eager to talk about topics such as mental illness and suicide, just as long as they're behind closed doors and hushed voices. This is the part that I am doing differently with you today. By sharing with you my experiences, I hope to raise my voice and to open those doors. And this is how I do it. I remember wandering the streets of my hometown. My mind was running, screaming, collapsing in on itself again. When you're in that place, and your perception becomes limited, those old thoughts kept coming back again. You're not good enough. You are not smart enough. You are not enough. I approached the railing to the overpass. I came to a light post on my left side and I stopped. Should I hang in there for just one more day? For what? To be that crazy kid? I climbed the railing like rungs of a ladder. My perception was squeezing out those instinctual words of hope that everyone has inside of them. I turned around and I felt the railing press against my back. In that moment, my entire life was completely in my control. And when you're living like that all the time, that's a really unfamiliar but satisfying feeling. I had very few choices in my life, but this was one of them, and I needed something, anything, that I could be certain about, because I just didn't want it to! I just didn't want it to hurt anymore. Before I knew it, there were flashing lights at the corners of my eyes. Crowds of late-night gatherers came to gawk at me from either side. A man on my right side screamed at me, "Jump, you coward!" Okay. That's enough. I started to pitch forward. I could feel the concrete underneath the edges of my feet begin to shift. And then an arm reached around my chest. A hand grabbed the back of my shirt. The man later told police that he dragged me back over the railing. Can suicide really be a choice if it's the only choice available? We ask ourselves, how can it be the only choice? And hopefully we wonder and we ask ourselves, how can we help? Well, we can start by appreciating that our mental health is contingent on the state and the flexibility of our perceptions. How expanded or how contracted they become impacts the choices that we make. When I was standing on that bridge, my perception had become so collapsed that I only had that one choice. One way that we can help is by recognizing that suicide is a public health concern, because it is a public health concern. 90% of people who die by suicide have a diagnosable and treatable mental illness at the time of their death. And we know that with medication, these treatments do work. At both the individual and societal levels, we can challenge our old ideas about mental illness. Now, for those of you that might be thinking about suicide today, good. Keep thinking about it. When I first started doing this, I used to plead with people to do something about this. You already are. Because you're here, and you're changing the way that you think, and that is what changes the world. Now, for those of you that might be contemplating suicide today, I know that there is a hope deep Keep that hope alive. We need you to be leaders in this conversation, whether we're ready to